And hello again, dear ones. Reverend Robert with you here.
Reverend Z right here.
And this is New Thought Today, the program that comes to you every Tuesday afternoon at 2 p.m. Mountain Time, where my dear brother Reverend Z and I get to take a look at the founding principles, statements, guiding documents, all the stuff that goes way back in, sometimes way back into history of religious science and the science of mind. So we are grateful, so very grateful that you are with us today. Good afternoon, Judy. It's good to see you. And folks, if you're with us today, feel free to comment and drop your comments, questions, anything you might have going on. We want this to be interactive, and if it's applicable, we'll definitely do everything we can to answer your questions around our discussions today. So good afternoon, Ronald. Good to see you, my brother. Grateful you are here as well. So, and if you're new to the program, folks, we started a while back now looking at what's known as the global vision from the Centers of Spiritual Living. And as we reached through that, we kind of started to get into this place of what we're called, what is Ernest Holmes's original statements, what we believe. And I just want to run real quick through what we've talked about in the last couple of weeks so far. Started off with, we believe in God, the living spirit, almighty, one indestructible, absolute, and self-existent cause. This one manifests itself in, through, and out all creation, but is not absorbed by its creation. The manifest universe is the body of God. It is the logical and necessary outcome of the infinite self-knowingness of God. We believe in the incarnation of spirit in every person, that all people are incarnations of this one spirit. We believe in the eternality, the immortality, and the continuity of the individual soul forever and ever expanding. We believe that heaven is within us and that we experience it to the degree that we become conscious of it. We believe the ultimate goal of life to be a complete emancipation from all discord of every nature, and that this goal is sure to be attained by all. And that last statement is where we're starting this week. Because where we left off last week was believing heaven is within us and that we experience it to the degree that we become conscious of it. Today, we get to launch into, we believe the ultimate goal of life to be a complete emancipation from all discord of every nature, and that this goal is sure to be attained by all. Rev Z, it's been a big week. That's a pretty big statement. Great place to launch off into our conversation today. So opening thoughts, feelings, and ideas.
Yeah, I think it's a great place that, that magic word of discord was in there. And, over the last bit, and I'm sure every day it's in some form of fashion, we all have some discord, i.e. some place where we need to make a decision between things and look at them and discern, if you will, what's appropriate, what's not appropriate, what's in line, what's not in line. And so when we look at this whole idea of trying to eliminate discord, I think a better way to say that, and I could be slapped for this, but it is more to minimize the discord, because there will always be a choice. All right. I mean, we're always in freedom, and we're always in choice to make one decision as opposed to another. But I think the essence of what that's trying to say is that in those moments where we have to make decisions, if we are more in line with the divine idea of life and God and everything there is, the ability to make choices that does not separate us in terms of our thought pattern, our behaviors, our ways of looking at things and people will be minimized. And that's what we're looking to do, I think, because, the ability to move forward in life is just that. The only way you can't do that is to stand still, and then you don't have to worry about any discord, at least consciously, because you're in just one place.
Right. Exactly. And that's one of the ways we can look at it as well, right? That anything that's I consider a discord in my life is in many ways my own creation and is a product of my own belief system. Now, getting to that truth could be tricky sometimes, because I'll tell you, there are times, I experience them all the time, where it's very easy to say, wow, look at what has been done to me. Look at what somebody cast upon me, and then operate from that belief system. What I believe Holmes was pointing to is the fact that when we recognize that discord, because somebody else's opinion of me is none of my business, and someone else's judgment of me in no way influences or affects how I get to live my life. So
Yes.
if I buy into any of that stuff, I'm creating that discord, and I can just as easily uncreate it or emancipate myself, free myself from those limiting beliefs.
Yeah. Yeah. And you know, there's a famous saying that goes, a belief is a thought you just keep on thinking.
Yes.
It does not necessarily have to be grounded in truth, right? And so as we begin to embark on this spiritual path, and we begin to couple that belief with actual experience, and be able to discern the difference between a belief and an experience, which ultimately becomes a knowing or a knowledge, now again, that begins to shrink this whole idea of discord, because I'm now going to be operating more from a premise of knowing,
Right.
as opposed to believing.
Yeah.
Right. There was a time I believed that, you know, there was an Easter bunny and a tooth fairy and those things. And then as I got more knowledge about that, then some of that's those belief systems changed or went away. And,
right.
and I understood them at a different level, saying that, hey, you know, we teach these to kids not to trick them or any of that, but we teach them to understand that there is a conscious awareness of how you engage life. And this is a way, I think, and I believed as I got older, of keeping open the idea for miracles, or for things to happen beyond your understanding, if you will.
Yeah. You know, that's what I've always thought of, the tooth fairy and the Easter bunny, right? We lose our sense of wonder, our sense of the miracle sometimes, of the sense of, hey, why can't it be true? Why can't, there's no sense this can't be true. Yeah, and that always reminds me that we're making it up as we go along. This thing called life, we're making it all up as we go along. Let's make sure we make it up so it works for us.
Right. And you know, one thing I just popped in my mind, we talked about this the other day. We were just chatting and we were talking about a statement from, I think it was from Troward, Thomas Troward, where it says, order is the first law of heaven.
Yeah.
And then he goes further to say that in that order, what we're really looking at is the principles and laws that cause, you know, space flight or air flight, or, you know, hydrodynamics or whatever. Those laws have been there for eternity. Yeah. But what happened was we were able to put things in the proper alignment and in the proper order for them to take place. And so again, before that happened, there was some discord between, could we fly? Are we meant to fly? You know, only birds fly. You had all those kinds of conversations going on when the Wright brothers, let's assume that was the original point, began to try to fly. But as they began to discern and put things in proper order, the discord between whether I can do this or not do it disappeared. And what appeared was, let's just keep putting things in order, and eventually the alignment is going to come and that thing is going to happen.
Yeah, exactly. You hit on, you know, one of my all-time favorites, right, folks? You've probably heard me say this before. If you put one thing in order in your life, then by the laws of the universe, everything else has got to line up behind that one thing, and will and can. And one of my very first teachers challenged me one night and said, what if that one thing you put in order is your spiritual practice, is your prayer life, is your journaling, is your visioning, is your meditation, whatever it is, your yoga put one thing in order in your life, and then you're creating that vibration that says there is order in all aspects of my life. Yes. And it's kind of tough for discord to exist in the midst of order. Yeah. They seem rather antithetical to me.
Yes. And that's key because, we go back to the whole scientific statement, right? Two things cannot occupy the same space at the same time.
Right.
And so when we begin to look at some of these spiritual truths that are based on mathematical proofs, if you will, and scientific proofs, the whole model begins to hold true because we can make this thing called correspondence, which is one of the laws. We can make a correspondence between A and B. I mean, you think about it. In terms of discord, everything that we have experienced in terms of scientific discovery and advancement started from an idea that someone had. And as they were able to get rid of the discord between the idea and what they were seeing in reality, they became closer and closer to discovering or releasing or understanding the thing that they previously thought didn't exist, didn't make sense, or whatever it is. So if we transfer that to our lives, understanding the oneness of God and the oneness of humanity, and looking at life, if you will, from a religious science, new thought perspective, we begin to engage life in that manner.
Yeah. Yes. Ooh, baby. See, this is where it gets fun.
Yes.
Right. As we dig into this, we start to find these universal truths. And in this statement specifically, there's that kind of that rejoinder at the very end, because we could end at, we believe the ultimate goal of life to be a complete emancipation from all discord of every nature. But Holmes goes on to say, and that this goal can be attained by all. Now, those that have been following this program know that Rev Z and I also are pretty well versed in the integral world. And when we look at the spiral of human evolution, of the evolution of consciousness, one of the main principles is that I can't force somebody to evolve.
Right.
I cannot force you. I cannot force your healing upon you. I cannot force you to believe any of this. And there are always going to be people on the planet that haven't heard this information, that don't know this philosophy, that aren't at a place yet where they can believe that they can be emancipated from all discord, or don't yet believe that they have the power to do that themselves. And that's the place where we get to reach back and help. Not because we're trying to force this upon someone, but because someone says, man, I don't know how to do that. You got any ideas? Absolutely. Let's get one thing in order. Let's get to, and see, you're famous for your analogies of coming around that spiral and coming back to that same spot, but it's not the same spot we were at.
Right. Right. And as you were saying that, my mind was coming up with another analogy, in that when we're going in a circle, we actually realize, even from mathematical proofs, that we do not come back to the exact 0.0 point. We may come back to 0.0.1. I'm at 0.01 as opposed to 0. The other key to that is, if we understand a little bit about centrifugal force, the faster I go, the bigger my spiral is going to be, right? So if I'm going at a slower revolution, my spiral point is going to be a lot closer to the original point than if I'm going faster. So all that to say is, in terms of order, number one, the more things I get in order, the faster I'm going to spin, right? Which means my evolutionary jumps, if you will, my evolutionary expansions will be bigger. They will be in, and that bigger may only be 0.2, right? Yep. But it is bigger than where I was before. So my understanding and my ability to emancipate myself from the discords starts growing exponentially, right? And so that's why this whole idea of religious science in my mind, which is close and dear to my heart, is that we understand that this universe that we live in is based on those principles.
Right.
And they're still being unfolded and realized every day, right? We have new scientific discoveries in space and math and in physics and quantum physics. And so that in itself speaks to this evolutionary aspect of life that is based on a sound foundation. But as we begin to observe more, as we begin to test more, we start a belief, we eliminate or emancipate ourselves from the discord, and at the right alignment and order moment, a new thing is revealed.
Right. Yeah. Again, I love these conversations because every time we get in here, it starts tripping wires in my brain that say yes and this and yes and this and yes and this. And I remember when I first got into this philosophy, the very basic classes with Centers for Spiritual Living, that foundations class, we had to write a prayer every week, just one, right?
Mm.
And in that first class, that seemed like a lot. And then you come back for the second class and you get your workbook and you look through it and it says one treatment, right? One treatment this week. And you're like, yeah, I could do that. That's easy. That's comfortable now. And my instructor, he was famous for turning ones into fives or tens. And you'd walk away at the end of the night going, wait a minute, I got to do 10 treatments. I got to write 10 different prayer treatments over the next week. And what he was doing was he's talking about is we were accelerating how quick we could get around that loop.
Yeah.
We were accelerating how quickly we would develop and deepen our practice. Because none of this works. I mean, it does, but it's hard to see it working in the first few treatments, in the first few prayers, in the first few meditations. It's over time. It's over the practice, continually creating that loop, continually coming back to, oh, I'm peeling away another layer on my belief around relationships. Oh, I'm peeling away another layer on my beliefs around money and finances. Oh, I'm peeling away another layer around my beliefs and perspectives on church. That was a big one. Yeah. So,
Yes.
there's, what are those examples in your life? That's what we're asking you to do, is look for where are those things happening in your life that you can point to. I've been here before, but I'm a bit better off this time around.
Yeah. And you know, when you were saying that, I was thinking when you're talking about the treatments, about order and alignment and resonance, right? So when you think about, for those of you who are proficient or practicing prayer, spiritual mind treatment as is taught by religious science or science of mind, or if it's a prayer from any tradition, it really doesn't matter. Right. When you're saying that prayer, you know, for the most part, I would suggest when you've hit it out the park, so to speak, or not, because there is a resonant feeling that when you finish saying whatever it is you're saying, for me, I know the first thing is I have no idea what I just said. If somebody asked me to do it again, I couldn't, right?
Yep.
Because I have fell into an alignment, and there's a vibrational frequency and a resonant where I am a conduit for the divine. And it's not coming out of my head. It's really coming out of my heart, where there's kind of a different kind of a way of transmitting stuff from that point. And when that happens, we can really be assured that either we're real good at getting rid of discord or we moving in that direction. Yep.
It's not about the words that are said as much as it is about the vibration that is created. And yes. I remember Reverend Dr. Michael Beckwith from stage one day was visiting Mile High here in Colorado, and he's doing his talk, and he's going, and he recognizes that there's a bunch of people in the audience trying to take notes and trying to keep up. And if you've ever seen Michael speak, he goes fast. And he was going fast that day. And he, in the middle of his talk, basically said, hey, put down your pencils. You don't need to be doing that. Because if you're doing that, you're not present to the vibration I'm trying to create for you. So let go of the exact words and tap into the vibration, the energy, the creation, the experience that we're having together.
Yes.
Whatever that might be.
Yeah.
So speaking of experiences, it is about that time that we give our sponsors just a quick moment to say hello and thank you for watching. This is a part of the New Thought Media Network, the most positively inspiring media network on planet Earth. And one of our flagship products is today's sponsor. That's New Thought Radio. Give us 45 seconds to introduce New Thought Radio, and we'll be right back. And we're back. This is New Thought Today here on the New Thought Media Network. I'm Rev Robert. This is my good friend and co-host, Rev Z. And we have been really looking into this earnest home statements of what we believe. And we just before the break, we were talking about this idea of an emancipation from all discord. And I love where Holmes goes following this. Whoops, that's not correct. Where might that statement be? Oh, maybe I put it in. Oh, the statement is that we believe in the unity of all life and that the highest God and the innermost God is one God. There it is. Yes, we believe in the unity of all life and that the highest God and the innermost God is one God. So this really is probably in so many ways points to the foundational principle of New Thought, Science of Mind, and in my mind, all the world's religions really have this central theme. Is this the point, Z? Is this 0 point where all experience, where it all springs from?
This is the 0 point, I think. We hear them talking about 0 point in science about trying to discover the origin of all things, and they're looking for the 0 point, right? And I think from a spiritual perspective, the correspondence to that mathematical point they're trying to come up with, the corresponding spiritual point is that there is one thing, and you can describe it in many different ways, because we know from moving from a humanity of symbolism, right, where we can use in the antiquity, there were symbols that were, as they say, pregnant with ideas, right, and they could mean more than one thing based on content and context. And so eventually when we got to a language to try to be more specific, it did great things in one respect, but it canceled out a whole lot of other things. And so as a result, and I'm on a little soapbox here, the whole idea about God and Allah and Jesus and Lord and Buddha and all these different names that we've come up with to describe, as Ernest says it, I like the way he does it, the thing itself became this one thing, this one energy, this one intelligence, this one heart, mind, however it resonates with you, because again, we're dealing with energy and resonance here. It basically says that there is this thing that is the creative source of all things, and it runs through any and everything that is in this universe, in this cosmos. And that when we can tap into that, when we can allow ourselves to be filled with that, now we have a resonance that is personal from the outer and the inner. And now we can learn from discernment. We know when we're in discernment or not. We know when we're in discord or not. We know when we're in resonance or not. And that's when we can say yes to all things.
Yeah, exactly. I forget who I was talking with this past week about this, but it is so incredibly easy for the human mind to slip into a perspective of God, if you will, as a human form, male, female, transgender, beyond gender, genderless, whatever, right? We all want to. And when Z was going through the list there, right? God, Buddha, Allah, Vishnu, Kuan Yin, source energy, right? How many of those immediately bring to mind a human form? The human condition, in part, is this immediate, and we're bored with, or well, are we bored with it, or are we taught it? That's maybe another discussion. But we operate from a place where we ascribe a human form to something that could not possibly be contained within just one human form, and has to be formless, and has to go beyond the body to be power, presence, intelligence, to be the one, and to bring us back into this sense of unity.
Yes. Yes.
I would have a tough time saying there is any more foundational of a belief than in the belief of oneness, unity, and while Holmes never, you speak of Holmes, right? And yeah, he had what, like 200 or 300 some odd words for the word for God in the Science of Mind textbook. Every other word is another word for God in his book. And but he wasn't really hooked onto the oneness term. It really didn't have the sway that it does today. And today, everywhere I look, right, we're using that term to help us all. I think, well, heck, we got a coffee mug that says it, right? Deeply we are one. How do we go about not only embracing this oneness, but making sure that we're living that, sharing that?
And you know, I so appreciate Ernest's attempt to create various, as they say, on ramps.
Yeah.
To get onto the highway of oneness, right? Because again, because of the resonance that each of us individually has with our environment, with people, with the thing itself, God, we have different on ramps, you know. And if you guys don't know by now, I'm the metaphor guy, so I'm gonna come up with them like water's falling from the sky. But when you think about music, there are certain music or songs that are played in the key of A. There are certain in the key of C. And if you tried to do a song and a C song, now of course you can do it, but the whole movement, the whole energy, the whole everything of that song will change. Right. And it's changing because of the instruments we have, or the vocalists we have, or whatever. But it allows us to tap into the one thing, that particular song, but at different variations, if you will, at different levels or different on ramps to get into that song.
Yeah.
And that's what life about. We got a multitude of flowers. We have a multitude of insects. We have a multitude of mammals, but they all still fall in a certain classification that allows us an on ramp, for lack of a better word, to life itself.
Right. And as we get to know these things, we get to practice in these things, well, all of it becomes easier. Let's stay with our on-ramp analogy for a while. When you first started learning how to drive, on-ramp's a tricky thing. Who merges, who gets the right of way, who speeds up, especially if you're trying to go left, the guy behind you's trying to go right, the guy in front of him's trying to get in front of you to go right so you can go left. It takes a little while. It takes a little getting used to it. But after a while, you got it down. You just merge right into traffic and off you go. In this philosophy, that those on-ramps, I believe, are the various forms of community, the various programs that we present, the various other ministers and thought philosophies that are in the world that lead us back to this oneness. Because remember, it's all God. So whether you're a unity folk, or whether you're a divine scientist or a religious scientist or a Christian scientist, or just an interfaith Christian, or whatever religious moniker you want to take on, whatever tradition has served you and perhaps is continuing to serve you, what I always loved about science of mind philosophy was I don't think, and we have this anecdotally, it was never meant to just stand on its own. This was always meant to help inform whatever we already had going on in our lives.
Right.
And Holmes wanted this philosophy not to be in a bubble, but to be taken into other traditions and other religious faith paths to help inform everyone that here's another way to say what we're all saying in our own other ways, I guess.
Yeah, well, in the Science of Mind text, in the introduction, it says that this being the Science of Mind textbook philosophy, if you will, is not a new revelation. Right. It is a culmination of the revelations. And I would describe that as saying, we're here to, as Jesus said, I'm not here to give you, I'm here to give you life more abundantly, right? And so what the Science of Mind and religious science principles, New Thought idea is about not necessarily changing your religion, because I believe, and I think the education will hold out, the religion itself is a set of practice, principles, and rituals that allow you to open up a space in your heart, in your life, in your mind, that allows that oneness that is within and without to connect. Yes. And so what Science of Mind is doing, what religious science is doing, is giving you some tools and some opportunities to solidify that even more and to enhance that correspondent recognition of the one thing that is moving, living, and having its being through all things. And so you can be a Christian and still practice New Thought principles. You could be a Muslim and still practice New Thought principles. Catholic, Jewish, Buddhist rather. Because we're looking at the spiritual essence of how you connect with the one thing, God itself, to accentuate and activate life itself. And once we do that, now we have the inner and the outer, and we can get rid of the discord and all those other things that we sometimes get hung up on, and say yes primarily to life, to God itself.
Yeah, and that's a great way to look at it, because I know you came to religious science through the Muslim faith. I came to religious science through the hippie faith, if you will, to really having no traditional religious background. And the point I'm getting to is that religious science, for me, became the vehicle to open my eyes to the greater principles and philosophy of New Thought. Religious science, taught by Centers for Spiritual Living now, or what was the Churches of Religious Science in the years past, all the education, all the work, everything that was done was to awaken, was the trapping, the dressing, the window dressing in many ways, to this greater recognition of oneness and unity. And some people will, and we have programs on this network, folks, right, that are really based in the Bible and helping people to understand the Bible from a New Thought perspective. I think we're getting close to having Z teach the Quran from a New Thought perspective for us too, but we'll talk about that at another time. How's that?
Yes. But it's there. I mean, that is the key. When you look at what the original term of what Ernest did, he didn't say religion science. He said religious, meaning it spans all bounds of religions to come up with this scientific approach to religion. And if we just step back and just look at the history of religion itself, during the times when each of the prominent religions were on the rise or at the pinnacle, if we look at the scientific discoveries and medical discoveries and those kinds of things, they came out of the religion tradition that was on its zenith at that time. So if you go back and you look at the dark ages and the golden ages and all, the different ways of describing the ebb and flow of life and religion, you'll see when these concepts that were able to tie God and man together in some kind of way, there was a overflowing of new ideas and ways of living that elevated all of life.
Yeah.
Not just that particular religion.
Right. Exactly. So, folks, and in many ways, this brings us to the next statement in our series. We believe that God is personal to all who feel this indwelling presence. And no matter, there's nothing there that says you got to believe like I do or like Ernest did, or there's nowhere in this that says you have to practice like we do or what we practice. But what I know is, for me, it's worked. For me, it's been the match. It's been the culmination of so many different things that here was finally something that for me said, this makes sense. This I can believe in. This I can follow, where everything else never quite connected, never quite created that alignment, that resonant vibration that opened me to universal truth.
Yes.
Quite the way this has. So we get to each develop our own personal relationship with God and live in that close indwelling presence.
Yep. And it's the concept of, you can take from the well the amount of water based on the container that you bring. So if I bring a cup of water, a cup to the well to get water, I'm going to get 8 ounces, 16 ounces. But if I bring a bucket, then I'm going to get maybe a gallon, maybe 2 gallons worth of that substance. And so when we look at this relationship to that, what we bring to the well of life, to the understanding of God, is what we're going to take away. So as we begin to empty our hearts and surrender to a force that is superior to us in terms of God, then we begin to allow a bigger space to fill up with that spirit, with that understanding, and we can move freely in the world because we understand better how it operates and how we play a part in it, I think. No volume, you're muted.
Thank you. I forget where it is in the textbook, but there's a space where Ernest writes, the question is, how much good may we experience in this life? And the answer is, as much as we may embody, as much as we can embody. So can I embody a belief in oneness? Can I embody a belief in peace, in abundance, and prosperity? It's not about proving to anybody but ourselves how much we can embody here.
Yes.
That's
where that personal relationship comes in with God, right? It's the relationship that I have with the divine in terms of what I bring back, and what you have is determined by what you bring back based on that personal relationship with the thing itself. And each one of us has that ability. We just have to activate it. We have to put things, as we said at the beginning of the session, we have to put the right things in order and alignment so that the energy flows to us. And we know, I look at this like the story in the Bible where it says, Moses struck the rock and the 12 tribes of Israel knew which spring to drink from. Well, to me, that's a metaphor that says when the knowledge comes forth, when the understanding comes out, everybody knows, if they're in tune, where they should be drinking from or where they should be dipping their container to pull their water back from.
Yes. My mind wants to go somewhere we've agreed not to go. but it's true. Everybody does get to believe based on the trough they're drinking from. Now, in this analogy, to me, it would appear that there are some troughs that are a little more clear, and there are some streams that go a little more directly to source, and some that get muddied, some that even get poisoned with false beliefs, with limiting beliefs, with beliefs in hate, beliefs in lack and limitation. We have the ability within ourselves to transcend all of that. Mm-hmm. And really, that's what the final statement we want to look at today, that's what that speaks to. Right? We believe in the direct revelation of truth Listen to that. The direct revelation of capital T truth. And that capital T is purposeful on Holmes's part. Anytime Holmes uses a capital letter, he's pointing to the divine aspect of truth. So we believe in the direct revelation of divine truth, God's truth, through the intuitive and spiritual nature of the individual, and that any person may become a revealer of capital T truth who lives in close contact with the indwelling spirit. This is the practice, right, Z?
Yeah. I mean, and because that kind of sums up everything, you know, who lives with the close indwelling. Well, that's speaking to the alignment. That's speaking to putting things in order. Because when I do that, I'm opening myself up and I'm available to be a conduit for things to work either through me or as me, in saying that I can discern by my observation, by my awareness, a direct revelation, i.e., not that I'm going to be a prophet or any of that, but the revelation means that something will be revealed, something will be uncovered that was previously covered, and it will be revealed that this is for you, this is yours, this is you, whatever the case may be. It makes things that are unseen seen when I can get into that inspirational, intuitive connection with God, because that is the source of all things.
Yeah. And this is one of those places I grab my copy of The Science of Mind here, folks, because it's always at hand. Holmes's definition of mystic. A mystic is one who senses the divine presence. A mystic is one who intuitively senses, capital R, reality. So we all have that ability to be a mystic, to allow for the mystic revelation of life. Now, you know, probably one of the most well-known mystic revealers in history is Jesus. A lot of other mystics along the way that have had these revelations. Name any religious deity or icon, and they have had, and we look at this as if it's some sort of mysterious thing. We have the ability to intuit direct knowledge of reality, capital R reality, capital T truth, simply by being in a close indwelling, having a close relationship with God. And we get to create God in how we show up and how we interact and how it almost seems too easy, Z.
Yeah. Well, and you know, how the saying goes, it's simple, but it's not easy, or it's easy, it's not simple. You figure that one out. But that's the thing, right? The ability to put things in order, whether it's your life, things, people, whatever, is a simple task. But it's not necessarily easy to do that when you go back to the top, when you have discord, right?
Yep.
When you have not developed that personal relationship or that personal understanding with the indwelling God within, and understand that there's a correspondence, as above, so below, as below, so above. When you begin to put that in perspective, then this last statement of making it easy, it becomes just that, easy, because I've done the pre-work or made an attempt to understand it. Things begin to fall into place. And then the ability to get a revelation or understanding of how life is, what needs to be done in this moment, comes in an intuitive hit. And I'm sure each and every one of us on this call, or if you come later, you'll be able to remember a point when you had an intuitive hit and you listened, right, and you followed it. You was like, woo, I don't know how that happened or what was going on, but boy, that was sweet right there.
Yep. and this isn't simply like, oh, there's a guy coming at me on the street, it's a dark night, I'm going to cross the street because I feel a little funny. It isn't that kind of an intuition. This is that deep, and I love how you use the word revelation, because I think everybody eventually comes to a realization that this is a revelatory journey. the truth, the reality of life, the truth of life, what I'm here to do, how I'm here to serve, is constantly just new things revealing themselves, new aspects of it. And if you watch our prayer program, when I'm on the hot seat in our prayer program, you'll hear me say this all the time. We pray, and I was taught prayer was an affirmative statement of truth as we know it. But what I also realized is when I really get into it, and I'm in that close indwelling presence, when I'm in close and tight, and me and God are having a good old time dancing with some words and some vibrations, it becomes the revelation as well. And things that I don't even know come spilling out of my mouth, things that I haven't imagined, things that I haven't planned, just reveal themselves, because this is truth.
Right. And that's a good point too, because I've crafted prayers to give at an event or to something, and they can be very powerful, and often they are. But there's something very different when you do something that's written or scripted, if you will. And scripted is not necessarily the right word because it has so many connotations to it. But there's something different between that written prayer and a prayer that's from the heart, where you are connected.
Yeah.
And you can get the same thing, because after a while, people who write, they know how to do that. But I think in a broad sweep, when that thing comes from the heart and is not scripted and is in the moment, there's a whole nother kind of a connection that takes place there. And I know I feel it, and I'm sure if you and the audience kind of just close your eyes and think back, you can find a point where somebody was speaking off the cuff and you said, "Woo, I don't know what to do right here, but I'm feeling it right now."
But I'm feeling it right now. Exactly. And that, so again, here we find some of the foundational aspects of universal belief. Because we could trace this one back too, through all the known religions. There is somewhere where one character or another, one prophet or another, has these direct revelations, these direct intuitive knowings. And popular culture is filled with it as well. Stories of just knowing mom needed me to call, or somebody was in trouble, or all that is, from my perspective, is a place where there's a power greater than we are, and someone is using that power to say, "Hey, I need some help," or "Something's up," or "Here's what," and we happen to be the person most aligned to receive that.
Yeah.
And be able to because we're all one. There's no real separation.
Yeah.
So what can be known in one place can be known in all places simultaneously.
And the interesting thing there, as you were saying that just popped into my head, was when we look at prophets and messengers and revealers of truth throughout history, almost to a person, when those things happened, they were in a wilderness, if you will. They were, i.e. / in an aloneness. They were by themselves, and they were able to shut down all of the chatter. Moses was in the wilderness. Muhammad was in the cave. Buddha was under the tree. You got all these different people who said, "I need to be quiet, or quiet my mind, still my heart, remove all the external things that are competing and trying to give me instructions and directions, and let me be still and tap into that intuitive, connected spirit of the divine to say yes." Right. And when I do that, just like they did, and it happens at all kinds of levels, we begin to have that direct communication with God, or the Most High, or the thing itself. And then we can begin to move, as you said earlier, as a mystic, where we do things they look a little odd, they look a little off center. But when we look at the results, we say, "Okay, yeah, that was on time. That was on time. There's something going on over there." And that's what we want. We want that something going on to be that connection to the divine where I can move and have my being in God itself.
Yes. And we become attractive. We become the vibration that attracts truth, that attracts a greater sense of this shared community, this oneness, this family that we're all a part of. Yeah, we got the crazy uncles, and yeah, we've got the, those that believe a little different. And no matter what, it all has to come back to a realization of the oneness. The realization that we are one, not with God, we are one of God. We are one of the infinite power, presence, and intelligence. And through the creative process, we have the ability to create the life we truly desire, the conditions that we truly desire, the experiences we truly desire. But like Z was saying, it can be easy to understand, but it's not always simple to embody, and we have to embody it.
Yes. Yes. And that's the key. I think anyway, is that embodying. That embodying part, meaning that, a good example of that is if anyone has studied martial arts or professional dance or dance at any high level, anything where there's this activities that have to take place without thinking, at that moment it has been embodied because I don't have to think about it. If I've studied martial arts, if somebody's punching and I know it ain't playing around, there's a embodiment that comes out and says, okay, well, we got to do something else right here. And I don't even think about it. It just happens.
Right.
And that's when we know we've embodied a thing, is that there's an intuitive insight within the body or within the situation, whether it's dance or music or whatever, that says this situation calls for this. You don't even know where it's coming from, and it just happens.
Yep. I was watching a film very recently. Excuse me, I won't remember the name of it. And it was about a young man, a young teacher who takes an assignment in the wilds of Alaska and runs into nothing but hate and resistance, and mostly because the young men and the young people in this town have given up. And the film, in many ways, highlights the high rate of suicide in these communities, and does a good job of making sure we're aware, and it provides resources on how to get involved.
Mm-hmm.
And the story, however, revolves around this young teacher who was a lacrosse player in college, fell in love with lacrosse, and convinces everybody to let him start a lacrosse team here in the wilds of Alaska with a handful of young men. And at one point, he's giving one of those rah-rah and inspirational speeches to the team, and he tells them, "Your stick is your lover. You don't go anywhere without your girlfriend. You don't go anywhere without your stick. Everywhere you go, you've got your lacrosse stick with you, and you're learning how to use it." And what he was getting them to the point of is, you've got to make this a part of who you are. It's not just something you pick up on Sundays and Wednesday nights. It's not just something you pick up when life is down, when things are down and you need a pick-me-up. Prayer, these principles, this philosophy is something that you live moment by moment, day by day, because the world doesn't stop when we become enlightened. That the world keeps on going, and we get to turn on the news and look at what's going on, and we get to go out and be a part of what's going on. And when we do that from these principles, from a deep recognition that just because you're wearing a different color t-shirt or hat than I am, or vote a different way than I do, does not mean that we have to be enemies. We're still all part of this oneness together.
Right. Yeah. And that just reminded me, I just had this thought, yesterday being Dr. King's celebration, there's this saying that he says, we know some of this may sound like, okay, if you haven't been practicing some of this, it may sound like it's okay. I don't know if I want to do this or how to do this or whatever. But Dr. King said this. He says, You don't have to see the whole staircase. You just need to make the first step. And the rest of it will reveal itself. That's that putting things in order. If I make the first step, as it says, there's a verse that says in the Quran that says, if you take one step toward Allah, Allah will take 10 steps towards you. So there's this active thing that has to go on. You have to give something, but what you get back is multiplied. And so as you begin to take the step and the next step and the next step, before you know it, you are so far down the track that you're like, wow, I should have done this a long time ago. It only took me 4 steps, and now I'm 40 yards down the track.
Mm-hmm. Yep, exactly. Oh, we could keep going now, couldn't we?
Yes, we could.
Folks, I tell you, some days just preparing for this show is as much fun as giving the show. Z and I get going, we'll spend 2-3 hours on the phone chatting and talking and going all kinds of places. So however, we do recognize that we've committed to an hour, and we trust that you have as well. We want to thank you for being with us here today. Now, the conversation's not over. We've got places to go. We've got more to look at. Next week, we're going to continue, and let's take a sneak peek. We'll pick up with, we believe that the universal spirit, which is God, operates through a universal mind, which is the law of God, and that we are surrounded by this creative mind, which receives the direct impress of our thought and acts upon it. Z, why do we save like the biggest statements for the opening of every show?
Say that again.
Why do we save these big statements for the opening of every show?
Yeah, well, I think it's to grab everybody's attention, maybe even ours, and say, whoa, all right, now we're going to step into some deep water here. Make sure you got your swimming gear in line.
Yeah, there you go. So if this has been fun, folks, come back next week, bring a friend, bring your snorkel, because it definitely seems like we go deep every week. But we are a part of the New Thought Media Network. We want to thank you for being here. And on behalf of the network, we want to thank you for your financial gifts, your tithes, your offerings, and your contributions that allow us to continue to have this kind of fun. More importantly, continue to reach out across this planet to share this mighty and powerful philosophy for how you can create the life you truly desire. Any final thoughts before we go here today, Z?
Well, I think let's cultivate, each and every one of us, let's cultivate this indwelling relationship with the God of all things, so that we can begin to get those inspirations and insights, so that we could move in time with the divine. And then we're going to be doing some things that we didn't even think we could do.
Yeah. And if you'd like a little help with that, feel free to reach out to Rev Z or I at ministertalk@ntmedia.org. If you have an idea for a show you'd like us to discuss, or something you'd like us to discuss on this show, or just some requests for some support to move forward in any of this stuff, we're happy to connect and support you in that way. That's ministertalk@ntmedia.org. All right, I think we're out of here for today, folks. Thank you so much for being with us. We'll be back again next Tuesday at 2 p.m. Mountain Time, right here on the New Thought Media Network. Until then, peace and blessings.
Peace.